My next guest is our Tavana author, former columnist at Playboy. He was a colleague of mine, a PhD in media studies and literature, and author of a very male centric book on Guns N' Roses. Art, it's a pleasure to
Hey,
talk to
Britt.
you. Thank you
Hey,
for
Bridge.
coming.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so glad to talk to you because you and I were at Playboy at that very weird time to be at Playboy at 2015. You know, Me Too started what, like 2013?
Something around then,
Yeah.
2014, really properly,
2013,
I think.
2014. And then it
Mm-hmm.
really got weird. And we were both there when they got rid of nudity because of like the male gaze. And all these male magazines were trying to grapple with their role and like all of this toxic masculinity, etc. What was your experience as a man in writing for Playboy at that time?
So Playboy, when I came in, was awesome because Cooper Hefner had this vision that he was going to restore the
Yep.
legacy, the brand, the identity, and he was going to make it for like a certain type of guy again, like Vice, but Playboy.
Yep.
And it was awesome. And it was like a good moment, I think. And I was brought in to kind of help him, I think, with some of the content. But very quickly, it was obvious that the people who were like on the board, the gatekeepers, the sort of editors behind the scenes, had a very different idea for where Playboy needed to go. And I think if you saw that New York Times article that came out like in 2017, 18, about how like woke Playboy was like redefining the brand and
Yep.
changing, it was like that was the end of. And I think the I think Playboy's a perfect microcosm of all this shit that's happening. And it's like men's interests are being like muted and subordinated and like pushed aside completely for like this sort of like catch all for everyone branding that I think is completely ignoring like the interests of guys. And in that process, I think you're losing voters, you're losing people who give a shit. And the gatekeepers are all just like, it feels like, at least to me, and you tell me if I'm wrong, it feels like all the gatekeepers in the cultural institutions like magazines, academia, publishing, Hollywood, like even tech to some degree, are like rich, upper class, like white women,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
who voted for Hillary Clinton. Like it feels like
Yeah.
that's they're the ones making the choices. And so people who are not in that, like, who can't like fit that framework, are being completely like marginalized. And I think young men especially feel like they don't even belong. They're not part of the conversation. They have no like, and if they do speak up, and I've seen this in like workshops I've taught, I've seen this with like young boys. My friends all have young boys, and it's a coincidence, but like, and I see this with them. It's like if they speak up, they feel, and I work with young boys, young men, and I feel like they feel like they're going to lose like career opportunities. Like they're
Right.
not going to have a job one day if they say how they really feel. And I think that's one of the worst things, because creating like a repressed young male who feels isolated, angry,
Right.
frustrated, sexually frustrated, like emotionally frustrated, and has no outlet. Like Men's Health magazine doesn't even talk about like men's health anymore. Like
Right.
GQ is focused on like, like aesthetics that have nothing to do with like men. And like Playboy, I don't even know what's going on in Playboy. It might exist, but
I
like
think they're doing like a once a year thing now. Who knows?
it's over. It's over. And
Yeah.
like Vice, it exists. It's trying to be Vice again, but it's not. Like it's like the only men's content is like Barstool, and then you have
Hmm.
like the manosphere. And
Hmm.
it's like the vacuum is being filled by people that I don't even think are necessarily like in it, maybe for the best reason. Sometimes I feel they're monetizing an opportunity, but I think like it's bad because like there is no outlet for these young boys. So they're playing video games, and they're doing
Hmm.
like Second Life shit, and they're just doing like mass. They're playing like these like open world games, and this is why the Democratic Party is like, let's advertise in video games because that's where they are. But the problem is you can't manufacture like authenticity.
Right.
You can't create your like liberal leftist Trump. Like it's not going to be Hassan Piker, because if even if you listen to his podcast or his show, he talks about how he's using like anti-feminist rhetoric or like masculine coded aesthetics or whatever to lure like people into like leftist politics. He's not like, it's not real. It's a
Right.
performance, and I think people see through it.
Because do you think, I mean, I feel like, and unfortunately, I guess the counter argument would be like, oh no, men, like they haven't had enough time. But I don't think you needed to completely subjugate them in order to lift everybody else up. It seemed like when the pendulum swang, they're like, all right, guys, now it's like you said, they were marginalized, which is a hilarious thing to say about like white men, and they have been. And you by the way couldn't even say that. You couldn't even
No.
say, hey, maybe telling men to sit down and shut up and that they need to be more emotional, but they can't. I don't want to hear from you. I mean, I remember when I was writing for Playboy, it was so crazy. That's when I was like, whoa, we have a big problem because I would ask men on Twitter, hey, I'm writing about whatever the topic was, balding. Write to me and let me know what you think. And I thought I'd get a couple of emails that were maybe 100 words. And I was getting 1,000 word essays from men telling me their whole story. I actually saw this as well with Letters to the Politically Homeless when I started that series and I was asking people, like, hey, how are you feeling about politics? They would write me their whole entire story of how they kind of ended up lost in the wilderness in politics after being either very red or very blue and being a little bit lost. A lot of it was blue to center. What do you think about the political homelessness and all of that as somebody who I forget, you don't have to tell me where you come from politically. It's not really important, but if you want to, you can add that color to the
Yeah.
discussion.
So I haven't voted at all in any form since like the Bush years, George W. years. I haven't voted for a president. I haven't voted locally. I'm just disengaged. I'm like the person they lost. I've never voted for a Democrat before. Previously,
Mm,
I voted for Republicans like in the early 2000s, and then I just didn't really care anymore. I was mostly a libertarian for that period of time, and then I kind of just became disengaged completely at like one point because I feel like every group to me does not represent like my interests, which are middle class interests. I think they all represent like the tech bros, the feudalists, the sort of oligarchs, or like, and on the left, you have this like bizarre group of just rich kids and gatekeepers who want everything to be like their little bubble and they're disconnected from reality completely. And so like they don't represent my interests. So like I don't have any like party. I'm like you. I'm politically homeless. The only difference is I like don't feel the need to align myself even with like anyone like at any point. Like I don't think Bernie's the right path forward. I don't think Trump is the right path forward. I don't even know what the right path is. But what I know is like people like me, middle class men, have been completely made to feel at least like they're not part of the discourse to shape where this country is going. And I think people like you have done a really good job of like talking to guys in some ways, better than even like the leftist like YouTubers that I watch and stuff who are not doing a good job. And I think big part of the problem
Yeah.
is like the focus isn't on what we care about. We care about personal health. We care about mental health. We care about money. We care about jobs. We care about like, I don't know, like home improvement and shit. We care about like our worlds that are not being acknowledged. Like it's like where we don't even belong. And I think ultimately it's a bad electoral strategy. You've
yeah.
lost voters forever. They're not going to come back. And I think one of the worst things that's happening is this conscious attempt to bring them back. It never works. Like
Yeah.
you can't build a coalition based on like really bad ads or Tim Walz who can't relate to working class people at all. I don't even know what his background is, but he's not like he doesn't code working class or whatever. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't connect. And I think the only way to do that is to find someone authentically who just emerges out of nowhere the way Trump did. Like
Yeah.
no one saw Trump coming. The Republicans certainly didn't want Trump to come do what he did. He like hijacked the entire party and swallowed it up like Godzilla. And I think the reason, and he did that authentically, he wasn't
Yeah.
planning on like appealing to men.
Yeah.
That wasn't his plan. I mean, he's like,
He
and
just
it just
did.
worked. He just did. And the left needs that, but they have no idea how to do that. And
So,
they never will, I don't think.
well, it's funny. We in Dumpster Fire, we were actually joking about this, and we were like, you have to just like the Democrats have to kind of, if you put it all in relationship advice, which is where we came from, you have to just ignore you've got to, it's like America's dating an asshole because they're kind of pussies. So if you're in that position, you've just got to kind of ignore, okay, go be with the asshole then and see how that works out. And I'll be here waiting for you when it all falls apart while they regroup because
Right.
it doesn't feel like there's any real message.